the rise of an empire from the dark depths of the sea, the return of the plague, and calamities in Brazil. 2025 is shaping up to be a pretty horrific year, according to Nostradamus, so let's talk about some of his darkest predictions for 2025. From the depths, a ruler will rise, empires will fall, and new waves will reign. The aquatic empire from the realm of the ocean. This ominous prediction from Nostradamus is supposedly said to play out this year. A lot to unpack with this one. From the depths, a ruler will rise? That sounds like it could be pretty metaphorical. If the quote ended there, I'd think it meant that some unknown power-hungry person would come to power, not literally someone rising up from under the water. But then he doubles down by referencing waves and caps it off, writing about an aquatic empire from the realm of the ocean. Not much room for metaphor at that point. It pretty clearly means something bad rising up from the water. So what could it be? Could he be talking about dangerous rising sea levels? Maybe, but that's something we've tread on plenty of times on the channel before. Pun very much intended. So here's another thing to consider when it comes to this aquatic empire thing. How about all those mysterious drones that have been showing up recently? There were reports of 50 drones flying out from the Atlantic Ocean near New Jersey. Could this be a sign of what Nostradamus was writing about? Maybe Nostradamus wasn't just talking about rising seas. What if he was predicting the rise of a literal aquatic empire? Aliens who have been holding up deep in the ocean since the beginning of time, finally ascending from the watery depths to wage war on the people of the land. This isn't necessarily a new idea. Stories of underwater kingdoms or forces rising from the depths have always intrigued people, but with more and more of these UAP sightings, it's starting to feel just a little less like fantasy. Maybe. All I'm saying is I think the government should really look into constructing giant mechs to battle the monstrous beasts that are going to be climbing out of the water to trample our cities. Quote, cruel wars and the outbreak of an ancient plague are also predicted to play out in England in 2025. Poor Europe. Baba Vanga also predicted horrible conflict erupting there this year. The idea of plague is nothing new, especially after the chaos of the little pandemic in 2020. Nostradamus was known for his eerie accuracy in some past predictions, and with the world still recovering from the effects of that global health crisis, him predicting that there will be another devastating plague, something way worse, definitely not something anyone wants to hear. In his writings, he talked about a resurgence of an old disease, one that could ravage the population, possibly even more deadly than any war. Some analysts believe this could refer to a new, more aggressive form of an old illness, maybe one from 2020, but it could also mean something like the Black Death, which decimated Europe centuries ago, and that would really suck. And mix in all the war and social unrest, and you got a recipe for a pretty crappy year for Europe. Now, moving on to Brazil. Nostradamus had some pretty wild predictions for what he called the Garden of the World, which some have interpreted to mean Brazil. He warned of flooding and volcanic activity and mentioned the country being, quote, seized and plunged into the tub and forced to drink waters poisoned by sulfur. Certainly sounds like a natural disaster to me. Flooding is already a big problem in Brazil, especially with deforestation, climate change making storms and heavy rains more intense, but the volcanic part, that's a bit trickier. Brazil isn't really known for active volcanoes, but just south of it in countries like Chile, well, they've had eruptions. The area is full of shifting tectonic plates, so it's not completely out of the question that Brazil could see volcanic activity, and Nostradamus' mention of poisoned waters could be pointing to the country's rising pollution levels. Rivers and oceans are getting more contaminated from things like industrial waste, deforestation, and oil spills, so maybe this prediction is a metaphor for a struggle with environmental damage and how it's leading to more natural disasters. Let's stay on this topic of natural disasters for a moment though, because Nostradamus wrote about them a lot. He had a pretty grim take on natural disasters in that they would only get worse, eventually leading to the destruction of mankind. At least some interpret. Again, his writing is often pretty nebulous with a lot of metaphor. He wrote, "The dry earth will grow more parched and there will be great floods when it is seen. That's a pretty biblical sounding warning, but some people are looking around at the current world we're living in and wondering if this could be referring to the extreme weather we're already seeing. Last year alone, we had some major hurricanes: Beryl, Milton, and Helene. Helene ended up being the deadliest hurricane to hit the US mainland since Katrina in 2005. And then there were the catastrophic floods in Afghanistan and Pakistan, where over 1,000 people lost their lives. Of course, natural disasters happen every year, and they've happened all throughout history, but there's been a noticeable increase in how frequent and intense they are, making Nostradamus' prediction feel eerily relevant. So, are we really seeing the signs of what he described as the end times? Personally, I think people tend to look at esoteric writing like this and pull from it what makes sense to them. It's just natural for us to draw comparisons to the world around us. But regardless of how you feel about so-called seers, deadly natural disasters do seem to be happening more frequently. Nostradamus wrote about a, quote, very great famine through pestiferous wave. For a long time, people shrugged this off because global food production kept increasing, but that confidence has dropped in the past few years. We've had droughts in the US, crop losses in Europe, flooding in Asia, and rising fertilizer costs. The World Food Program said in 2025 and 2026 it could be extremely tough for food access in certain regions because weather patterns have just gotten so unpredictable. On top of that, conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East have disrupted shipments of grain. Even countries that don't normally worry about shortages are starting to feel the pressure. Prices went up worldwide between 2022 and 2024, and many haven't dropped back down. Multiple harvest seasons get hit back to back. The world could easily see shortages and price spikes at the same time. Nostradamus also mentions the sea turning bad, fish dying, and sickness spreading along the coast. For hundreds of years, people assumed this was probably a metaphor, but in more recent years, the conversation's shifted because this is exactly what's happening in certain parts of the world. Toxic algae blooms have been killing fish in Florida, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Mediterranean. Japan's water release from Fukushima created a huge debate about ocean health. Some coastal regions in South America have already seen tons of fish dying off. Combine all that with rising ocean temperatures, which are literally the highest ever recorded, and scientists are genuinely worried about underwater ecosystems dying out. In terms of how things will play out going forward, well, multiple research groups are saying the next 2 to 3 years will basically decide if parts of the ocean bounce back or just keep getting worse. It's not an overnight thing, but the idea of coastlines struggling with contamination, dead zones, and declining fish populations, that is already happening. From the depths, a ruler will rise, empires will fall, and new waves will reign. The aquatic empire from the realm of the ocean, end quote. Really seems like Nostradamus is entering into Aquaman territory with this one, explicitly talking about something rising from the ocean. It could be a metaphor, but with the mention of waves and an actual aquatic empire, I don't know, it seems kind of hard to read that figuratively. So what could he have meant? Well, one way to look at it, strange things are literally coming out of the water. There have been reports over the last few years of UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, emerging or entering into the ocean. One of the most famous is the 2019 USS Omaha sighting, where Navy personnel recorded a spherical object coming out of the water near San Diego, hovering for a bit and then disappearing. Incidents like that are rare, but they do happen, and it is becoming more common. Nostradamus wrote about earthquakes a lot, and people are linking some of his warnings to what we've been seeing lately. Seismologists have been warning about the Cascadia subduction zone off the Pacific Northwest. It's been quiet for hundreds of years, though, so what's the big deal? Well, it's actually kind of the problem. It's overdue. Japan has had continuous aftershock cycles. Turkey's 2023 earthquake was a reminder that even in places built to handle disasters, you can never fully prepare for how violent and deadly nature can be. Scientists are especially keeping an eye on the next few years because certain areas are at a higher risk, like those along the Ring of Fire. That's the chain of volcanoes and fault lines stretching around the edges of the Pacific Ocean, from Japan down to Indonesia, across to Alaska, and all the way to Chile. It doesn't mean a huge quake will definitely hit in 2026, but researchers say the odds in these zones are higher than usual. Not to mention, we've also had a rise in smaller quakes happening in places that normally don't get them, like parts of Europe in the central US. This one feels like Nostradamus accidentally predicted climate change without even knowing what climate was. He wrote about unbearable heat and people fleeing areas that used to be safe and livable. Already sounds pretty familiar. The last few summers were the hottest on record. Countries like Greece, Canada, Spain, and Algeria all saw brutal fires. US cities like Phoenix hit temperatures that used to be unheard of. Climate scientists said 2025 and 2026 could be transitional years. Either we stabilize some of the damage, or we hit a long-term warm cycle that's going to change everything. Farming to where people can live. It's not some fantasy scenario. Cities are already talking about heat migration plans, cooling zones, because their infrastructure just isn't built for them. Nostradamus has a line in Book 1, Quatrain 26, where he mentions a great swarm of bees rising up and causing chaos. Nostradamus didn't really write long paragraphs. He wrote quatrains, which are just short little 4-line poems. Super cryptic, but there are some eerie similarities in the writing to current events. So, this mysterious swarm of bees. Highly doubt he was literally talking about bees. Now look at what's been happening lately though with drones and AI. We're seeing way more stories about drone swarms popping up, airports getting shut down because of it, military bases scrambling jets because dozens of these tiny flying objects showed up on radar, and police departments reporting clusters of unidentified drones flying in formation at night. Then you've got the robot side of things. Companies like Boston Dynamics and Tesla keep showing off their humanoid bots, and they look less like prototypes every year. Tesla's Optimus robots were literally shown doing basic factory tasks on their own in early 2025. So looking at Nostradamus talking about a swarm overwhelming cities, this does feel eerily fitting. Another one of his most talked about lines is where he writes about the sky burning at 45 degrees. If we take this one more literally, we could look at how insane Earth's temperatures have gotten. In 2023, 24, and 25, we saw heat records break over and over, especially around the 45-degree latitude line, which cuts right through places like Italy, the US Pacific Northwest, parts of China. People online have taken that sky-burning line and connected to everything from heat domes to solar storms. NASA actually confirmed that the sun entered a peak activity cycle in 2025, which does increase the chances of strong solar flares, the kind that can mess with satellites and power grids. One massive solar blast could knock out communications at the exact moment the world is already struggling to cool down. A new conflict brews. In this quatrain, Nostradamus talks about two major powers drifting toward a massive clash, and nations pulled into the chaos, whether they want it or not. And yeah, nobody has to reach very far to connect that to what's happening today. Tensions between the US and China haven't slowed down at all. Russia's situation that I cannot discuss in detail on YouTube is still ongoing. India's rise has changed the balance of power in Asia, and smaller countries keep getting caught in the middle, especially around the South China Sea. What spooks people out about this prediction is how it lines up with recent military reports. NATO has openly said that 2026 to 2032 is the period they're worried about the most when it comes to potential global conflict. Add in rising military spending, constant cyber attacks, and all kinds of crazy experimental drones flying through the air for who knows what reason, and the world is feeling like a pretty scary place. This next prediction talks about a powerful northern figure losing influence. For years, people associated it with different rulers, but recently it keeps getting tied to Russia because of how unstable the country has become. Tensions are bubbling up no matter how tightly the government tries to control the narrative. Their military has taken heavy losses, and a lot of intelligence analysts, not random bloggers but actual researchers, have said Russia could hit a breaking point depending on how the situation evolves. Nostradamus describing a fall doesn't necessarily mean death. It could be a change in power. The timeline lines up with actual predictions from political scientists who say the next 2 years are going to be extremely unpredictable for Russia. Nostradamus wasn't specific, but the idea of a northern leader facing a sudden downfall does seem to fit the current situation a little too well. Next on the list, we have two giants collide. In this one, Nostradamus describes two massive forces clashing, with smaller nations scrambling to protect themselves. People love connecting this to the idea of alliances, not just countries going to war alone, but entire blocs lining up behind them. When you look at what's been happening around NATO, BRICS, and how the West and East are slowly pulling away from each other when it comes to money, trade, and who they work with, this one suddenly feels way more relevant than it used to. It's kind of scary how fast things are changing. BRICS expanded for the first time in years. NATO accepted new members. Countries that used to be neutral are picking sides for the first time in decades. Even without a major war, tension around the world right now is palpable. Trade disputes, fights over rare minerals, cyber attacks. It's not all tanks and missiles anymore. A lot of people think Nostradamus was describing a kind of conflict that doesn't need a battlefield to be dangerous, a modern form of warfare. And unfortunately, it seems to be lining up a little too much with where the world seems to be heading in 2026 and beyond. This prediction seemed completely insane until recently. Vanga said humans would develop actual telepathy, mind-to-mind communication, but check what happened this year. Elon Musk reported in September 2025 that Neuralink had 12 trial participants with over 2,000 cumulative days and 15,000 hours of usage. This year, a paralyzed military veteran named RJ received his implant and can now control his computer and smartphone with his thoughts. One ALS patient, Bradford Smith, is typing messages straight from his brain and even uses AI chatbot Grok to help draft responses based on notes he takes mentally. Neuralink's blind sight system received FDA breakthrough device designation aimed at restoring vision to blind people. They're planning more implants, expanding trials internationally. China's only about 18 months behind Neuralink in their own brain-computer interface trials. Technology keeps advancing like this in 2026. We're looking at early forms of actual thought transmission between devices. Connect two people's brain implants through a network, and you basically got telepathy. Now, to be fair, this is something I actually am glad is happening, but it's still something people have cited Baba Vanga predicting. Vanga predicted major leaps in growing organs. In 2025, delivered. eGenesis got FDA clearance to begin formal clinical trials of their genetically modified pig kidney. The purpose, to see whether kidneys from genetically modified pigs could be safely transplanted into humans. They transplanted a pig kidney with 69 gene edits into a 66-year-old patient. These aren't theoretical anymore. These are actual human trials happening right now with real patients. Researchers at the Institute of Bioengineering of Catalonia developed technology to produce human kidney organoids at scale and successfully integrate them with pig kidneys during testing. By the way, an organoid is basically a miniature simplified copy of a human organ, like a tiny kidney or a small piece of brain that is grown in a lab dish. Scientists use them in a lab to study diseases and test new medicines. The FDA is hoping for pig kidneys to last about 30 years in humans once this becomes standard practice. In the very near future, this could accelerate to where genetically modified organs become standard, and the organ transplant waiting list could actually start shrinking. People who would have died waiting might live. Life expectancy could legitimately push past 120 if this technology scales up and becomes more accessible. Again, admittedly, another prediction of hers we do hope comes true, but this next one is a toss-up. This is the prediction everyone either dismisses, is terrified of, or, if you're a sci-fi nerd like me, gets very excited about. Vanga said humanity would make definitive, undeniable contact with extraterrestrial life in 2026. Not speculation, not mysterious objects that might be something up in the sky, but confirmed contact. She also specified it would happen during a major sporting event, and we do have the Olympics coming up in a couple months. If I were an alien species waiting to make contact at a major sporting event, that'd be the one I'd choose, being that it's a big global thing. The prediction also mentioned this contact could lead to a global crisis or apocalypse though. So maybe we're not ready for this. Maybe whoever shows up is not friendly. Maybe finding out you're not alone breaks something fundamental of how we see ourselves and our place in the universe. Or perhaps this encounter leads to a big, shift in our understanding of the universe that changes us, leading to a shift or end to the current way our society is structured. That could be, another way of interpreting the apocalypse thing. Right now, we've got something like 44 volcanoes constantly erupting across the globe. Iceland's Sundukar crater system has gone off 9 times between December 2023 and August of 2025. It's been chaotic there. Parts of Ethiopia have been rocked by multiple earthquakes since early 2025. Even tourist spots like Santorini in Greece that had a huge tremor swarm earlier this year, thousands of quakes, with 48 being strong ones. All of this suggests things could be getting more unstable under the surface. At the same time, climate change is making things worse by creating harsher conditions that cause massive wildfires. For 2026, Vanga saw this ramping up significantly. Dormant volcanoes that haven't been active in centuries suddenly waking up, major earthquakes, massive flooding, the kind of disasters that make places unlivable for months or even years. And I know I keep touching on this, but Baba Vanga also ominously predicted environmental collapse entirely. The first 6 months, as I said, of 2025 hit the US with the most expensive run of weather disasters they've ever seen. And the whole world is facing an estimated $145 billion bill this year just for things that were insured. And that number keeps going up every year. It's been over $100 billion for 5 years straight now. The actual total damage is way worse than that. We're seeing the scary signs everywhere. Oceans rising, extreme weather becoming a constant problem instead of a rare one. Places that used to be great for farming are simply burning out. Drought is the single biggest enemy to agriculture, hitting places like Mexico, where drastically cut corn crops in 2024. The whole thing creates a massive domino effect. As the environment collapses, the systems we've built on it, food, water, health, they all go with it. And I'll cheat here a bit and end on a high note. One of the more famous claims made by the blind mystic is the discovery of a completely new energy source, something clean, powerful, and basically limitless. People have been using this prediction to hype up everything from nuclear fusion to alien technology. Fusion actually made a big jump this year. The challenge with fusion is that you have to heat fuel hotter than the sun and then hold that super hot material called plasma in place without letting it touch the reactor walls. In February, a major lab in France achieved a world record by sustaining that super hot plasma for over 22 minutes. Why is that important? For fusion to work as a power plant, you need a stable reaction that lasts for a long time. So this 22-minute achievement proves we can keep that intense heat contained for longer than ever before. And in September, a US startup claimed their prototype reactor could run small facilities off fusion power for the first time. No one knows if they're overselling it, but investors dumped millions into it instantly. Something big gets proven in 2026, a stable, long-duration fusion reaction that would match this prediction almost perfectly. It wouldn't fix the world overnight, but it would change everything about how we power the world. Baba Vanga predicted machines would start replacing human workers on a massive scale. Safe to say, that one's coming true. 2025 was the year companies stopped dipping their toes in AI and went fully in, or at least took huge steps forward with it. We already had retail chains replacing customer service staff with AI kiosks and stuff like that, but look at all these industries implementing AI now. How many companies use AI chatbots to respond to customers' emails now? And look at the entertainment industry. I see advertisements made entirely with AI all the time now, ads that used to be created by human beings, but all of a sudden, there's just a whole segment of work that's basically gone. And two major animation studios admitted they used AI to fill in background art and lighting work this year, which used to be done by teams of dozens. This is all happening really fast. No one's easing into this. Jobs that felt safe are suddenly being automated because the tools are getting too good too fast. So if this keeps accelerating through 2026, which, do we honestly think it won't? As it keeps accelerating through the new year, we could see entire industries remade in a way that leaves millions scrambling to find work that still requires a human being. Vanga talked about a dragon rising to power, a metaphorical one, of course, representing a massive alliance between Russia, India, and China. And this isn't some far-off possibility anymore. In July 2025, BRICS, consisting of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, held its summit in Rio and officially added Indonesia as a full member, plus welcomed 11 new partner countries, including Belarus, Bolivia, Kazakhstan, Cuba, Nigeria, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Uganda, and Uzbekistan. The bloc now accounts for over 45% of global GDP and represents more than half the world's population. Trump threatened to slap an additional 10% tariff on any country aligning themselves with the quote-unquote anti-American policies of BRICS. I don't want to get into all the tariff stuff, my god, but the point is, things are really changing. Another prediction tied to the dragon is a huge rise in international conflict. Not necessarily one big war, but pressure between world powers. Vanga described a period where smaller conflicts stack up one after another until they all pretty much link together into something much bigger. A third world war, possibly. Looking at how this year's gone, that certainly seems to be how things are going, or certainly very possible. And do you really need me to explain that in detail? Just look at the state of the US and tell me things are hunky-dory. Nothing's exploded into an outright global conflict yet, but a lot can change in a very short amount of time, as we've already seen. The atmosphere definitely feels heavy. Vanga saw massive population movements, entire regions being abandoned as things get more and more unsustainable. She singled out Europe specifically, saying it would see its population crash thanks to a combination of things, but in terms of mass migration in general, natural disasters, the economy collapsing, conflict driving people out, the groundwork's already been laid. Climate disasters are getting worse across the board. The first half of 2025 was the costliest ever recorded for weather and climate disasters in the United States, with 14 events exceeding $1 billion in damages. The LA wildfires alone caused over $61 billion in damage. Around the world, natural disasters have caused more than $131 billion in losses just in the first half of 2025. Myanmar got hit with a 7.7 magnitude earthquake in March 2025 that killed an estimated 4,500 people. As of September 2025, there were 44 volcanoes around the world listed as actively erupting. That's on top of all the fires, floods, and crazy weather that just keeps getting worse every year. By the end of 2024, more than 83 million people were displaced inside their own countries, and most of them are in places that get hit hardest by climate-related mess, storms, droughts, flooding, all of it happening at once. A huge chunk of displaced people are dealing with both conflict and climate pressure at the same time. So once a place becomes too dangerous to live in, people don't really have a choice. They leave.
Think your coastal condo is safe? Nostradamus might bet against it, and so does the IPCC. Century 3, Quatrain 25. The water will rise to the high place. The great will be forced to leave their homes. UN climate panel projections show sea levels could rise an additional 0.23 meters by 2025 relative to 2000. Combine that with king tide amplification, and you reach the threshold at which seawater breaches Miami's seawalls, already dubbed sunny day flooding. The verse's grands, the powerful, fleeing palaces matches the $1 trillion global property value at risk pinned in a 2024 JP Morgan analysis. Nostradamus wrote about nobility, modern spreadsheets talk about billion-dollar beach houses, but the storyline is identical. A 450-year-old prophet predicting ChatGPT's evil twin? Stay with me. Century 8, Quatrain 3. In the clear glass, the bodiless spirit will see everything. It will judge kings and peoples with cold steel. Clear glass can be read as a screen, spirit without a body as artificial intelligence. In 2024, the EU AI Act set the first legal boundaries for general purpose models amid fears of autonomous lethal decision-making. DeepMind's own policy brief labels unchecked AGI a catastrophic risk within the coming few years. That timeline slams right into 2025. Nostradamus warns the AI will judge kings and peoples. Translation: algorithmic governance. If that feels hyperbolic, ask the OECD, whose 2024 survey found 48 governments already deploy predictive policing software. What if Mars stopped moving? Century 5, Quatrain 79. The wandering red will be caught in the embrace, herald of a great setback for the starmen. On January 27, 2025, Mars entered an unusually long solar conjunction, disrupting light-of-sight communication with rovers and orbiters for nearly 4 weeks. NASA needed to suspend commands. Mission planners call it a blackout. The verse's red wanderer, which is classic code for Mars, caught in the embrace matches the sun's gravitational grip. The great setback for starmen echoes JPL memos describing data loss risk during conjunctions. It's one of the few Nostradamus lines that fits a very specific calendar-locked astronomical event. Prophecy or politics, a verse that analysts and war game simulators both fear. Century 10, Quatrain 86. The young lion will overcome the old eagle. On frozen fields, their agreements will be broken. Some say the lion equals modern China, the stone lions of Beijing, and the eagle equals the United States. Frozen fields implies Arctic or data cold cyber fronts. RAND's 2024 report flags 2025 as a critical window for tension over Arctic shipping routes newly accessible by meltwater. If agreements fracture, competition could escalate to satellite jamming or quantum encryption sabotage, an arena literally cold at temperatures near absolute zero. The quatrain reads like a 16th century executive summary of next year's defense tech briefings. Scientists drilled into Campe Flegray's magma chamber, and what they found echoes this line. Century 11, Quatrain 83. Beneath the burning hill, the ground will weep. Napolis will see the shadow of its ancient abyss. Campe Flegrei, a supervolcanic caldera west of Naples, shows record uplift over 110 centimeters since 1950, with 6,000 microquakes in 2024 alone. INGV, which is Italy's volcanology institute, upgraded alert levels, hinting an eruption window within several years. Nostradamus names Napolis outright and describes ground weeping, a poetic match to hydrothermal venting fissures now mapped by LiDAR. An explosive event rivals 79 CE Vesuvius, endangering 3 million residents. Government contingency drills for 2025 evacuation align disturbingly well with the Renaissance riddle. Could a metal once used for magic be Wall Street's greatest weakness? Century 7, Quatrain 15. The silver thread will break the great bargain. The rich man will weep night and day without ceasing. Silver is essential for photovoltaic cells and AI hardware. Analysts predict a 2025 supply crunch as solar installations triple to meet decarbonization goals, while Mexican mines, providing 24% of global silver, face water scarcity shutdowns. The silver thread breaking could trigger price spikes across electronics and renewable sectors, tanking indices reliant on green tech growth. Bloomberg NEF's late 2024 model lists silver as the single point of failure metal for 2025's clean energy transition. Wealthy investors cry day and night. Insert your own crypto flash crash meme here. Nostradamus already did the foreshadowing. So, was Nostradamus a time traveler, or did we retrofit his words onto the nightly news? Either way, the overlap is hard to ignore. Rogue solar flares, AI ethics bombs, zombie microbes, and supervolcanoes all circling on a single date on the calendar, 2025. As you kill the lights tonight, remember, the future isn't written in stone, but it might be scribbled in 16th century ink. Imagine a sunrise so intense it fries satellites before you finish breakfast. Century 4, Quatrain 30. The whole beach will be covered in sun, and fish in the sea shrivel. Scholars long dismissed it as poetic exaggeration until NASA's Parker Solar Probe logged record-breaking coronal mass ejections headed towards Earth's orbital path. A direct hit could overload power grids and raise sea surface temperatures locally, causing the very shriveling marine biologists now track in mass coral bleaching events. NOAA's 2024 report warns that a single X-class flare could cost $2 trillion in infrastructure damage and knock out fishing industries for years. The rhyme suddenly feels less Renaissance hysteria, more grim space weather forecast. What if the next pandemic has been frozen in time for 40,000 years? Century 1, Quatrain 64. In the deep north, dormant plague will emerge, new terror hidden by the ancient cold. Permafrost thaw in Siberia is already releasing anthrax spores and giant viruses like Pithovirus sibericum. A 2023 Nature study isolated 13 zombie pathogens still infectious after millennia underground. Cue Nostradamus talking about a plague that sleeps in the deep north. Epidemiologists at the Pasteur Institute project that by 2025, enough tundra will melt to expose roughly 30 million kilometers cubed of once sealed organic matter, an ideal incubator for prehistoric microbes. The verse's new terror no longer sounds medieval, it's a line item in modern biorisk assessments. Could a crack in the Atlantic literally tear continents apart and economies with them? Century 6, Quatrain 97. Two brothers divided, a new land will arise. The old city will see its strength fall. Geologists have mapped the mid-Atlantic ridge's Charlie Gibbs fracture zone, a fault widening faster than any other segment. If acceleration continues, Iceland could experience a rift eruption rivaling 1783's Lackey event, which dropped northern hemisphere temperatures and triggered European famine. The old city losing power? Copenhagen and London sit within the ash dispersal models created by the European Space Agency for a worst-case 2025 scenario. A 450-year-old stanza eerily mirrors our seafloor sonar scans today. No, he never used the word airplane, but what he wrote was scarily close. Century 2, Quatrain 41. Birds of steel will fall at noon, fire from heaven bringing great misery. Aviation watchdogs have raised alarms about increased solar storm risks to avionics and GPS in 2025's Solar Cycle 25 peak. Boeing's 2024 white paper notes that shielding older flight computers against charged particles bombardment may be inadequate. During 2003's Halloween storms, 28 flights were rerouted over the poles. Translate that to 2025 volumes, and you get Nostradamus' iron birds falling metaphor, grounded or worse, lost mid-flight. Insurers have already drafted premium hikes linked directly to space weather indices.
A new conflict brews. In this quatrain, Nostradamus talks about two major powers drifting toward a massive clash. Nations pulled into the chaos, whether they want it or not. And yeah, nobody has to reach very far to connect that to what's happening today. Tensions between the US and China haven't slowed down at all. Russia's situation that I cannot discuss in detail on YouTube is still ongoing. India's rise has changed the balance of power in Asia, and smaller countries keep getting caught in the middle, especially around the South China Sea. What spooks people out about this prediction is how it lines up with recent military reports. NATO has openly said that 2026 to 2032 is the period they're worried about the most when it comes to potential global conflict. Add in rising military spending, constant cyber attacks, and all kinds of crazy experimental drones flying through the air for who knows what reason, and the world is feeling like a pretty scary place. This next prediction talks about a powerful northern figure losing influence. For years, people associated it with different rulers, but recently it keeps getting tied to Russia because of how unstable the country has become. Tensions are bubbling up no matter how tightly the government tries to control the narrative. Their military has taken heavy losses, and a lot of intelligence analysts, not random bloggers but actual researchers, have said Russia could hit a breaking point depending on how the situation evolves. Nostradamus describing a fall doesn't necessarily mean death, it could be a change in power. The timeline lines up with actual predictions from political scientists who say the next 2 years are going to be extremely unpredictable for Russia. Nostradamus wasn't specific, but the idea of a northern leader facing a sudden downfall does seem to fit the current situation a little too well. Next on the list, we have two giants collide. In this one, Nostradamus describes two massive forces clashing, with smaller nations scrambling to protect themselves. People love connecting this to the idea of alliances, not just countries going to war alone, but entire blocs lining up behind them. You look at what's been happening around NATO, BRICS, and how the West and East are slowly pulling away from each other when it comes to money, trade, and who they work with. This one suddenly feels way more relevant than it used to. It's kind of scary how fast things are changing. BRICS expanded for the first time in years. NATO accepted new members. Countries that used to be neutral are picking sides for the first time in decades. Even without a major war, tension around the world right now is palpable. Trade disputes, fights over rare minerals, cyber attacks. It's not all tanks and missiles anymore. A lot of people think Nostradamus was describing a kind of conflict that doesn't need a battlefield to be dangerous, a modern form of warfare. And unfortunately, it seems to be lining up a little too much with where the world seems to be heading in 2026 and beyond. Nostradamus wrote about a, quote, very great famine through pestiferous wave. For a long time, people shrugged this off because global food production kept increasing, but that confidence has dropped in the past few years. We've had droughts in the US, crop losses in Europe, flooding in Asia, and rising fertilizer costs. The World Food Program said in 2025 and 2026, it could be extremely tough for food access in certain regions because weather patterns have just gotten so unpredictable. On top of that, conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East have disrupted shipments of grain. Even countries that don't normally worry about shortages are starting to feel the pressure. Prices went up worldwide between 2022 and 2024, and many haven't dropped back down. Multiple harvest seasons get hit back to back. The world could easily see shortages and price spikes at the same time. Nostradamus also mentions the sea turning bad, fish dying, and sickness spreading along the coast. For hundreds of years, people assumed this was probably a metaphor, but in more recent years, the conversation's shifted because this is exactly what's happening in certain parts of the world. Toxic algae blooms have been killing fish in Florida, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Mediterranean. Japan's water release from Fukushima created a huge debate about ocean health. Some coastal regions in South America have already seen tons of fish dying off. Combine all that with rising ocean temperatures, which are literally the highest ever recorded, and scientists are genuinely worried about underwater ecosystems dying out. In terms of how things will play out going forward, well, multiple research groups are saying the next 2 to 3 years will basically decide if parts of the ocean bounce back or just keep getting worse. It's not an overnight thing, but the idea of coastlines struggling with contamination, dead zones, and declining fish populations, that is already happening. From the depths, a ruler will rise, empires will fall, and new waves will reign. The aquatic empire from the realm of the ocean, end quote. Really seems like Nostradamus is entering into Aquaman territory with this one, explicitly talking about something rising from the ocean. It could be a metaphor, but with the mention of waves and an actual aquatic empire, I don't know, it seems kind of hard to read that figuratively. So what could he have meant? Well, one way to look at it, strange things are literally coming out of the water. There have been reports over the last few years of UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, emerging or entering into the ocean. One of the most famous is the 2019 USS Omaha sighting, where Navy personnel recorded a spherical object coming out of the water near San Diego, hovering for a bit and then disappearing. Incidents like that are rare, but they do happen, and it is becoming more common. Nostradamus wrote about earthquakes a lot, and people are linking some of his warnings to what we've been seeing lately. Seismologists have been warning about the Cascadia subduction zone off the Pacific Northwest. It's been quiet for hundreds of years, though, so what's the big deal? Well, it's actually kind of the problem. It's overdue. Japan has had continuous aftershock cycles. Turkey's 2023 earthquake was a reminder that even in places built to handle disasters, you can never fully prepare for how violent and deadly nature can be. Scientists are especially keeping an eye on the next few years because certain areas are at a higher risk, like those along the Ring of Fire. That's the chain of volcanoes and fault lines stretching around the edges of the Pacific Ocean, from Japan down to Indonesia, across to Alaska, and all the way to Chile. It doesn't mean a huge quake will definitely hit in 2026, but researchers say the odds in these zones are higher than usual. Not to mention, we've also had a rise in smaller quakes happening in places that normally don't get them, like parts of Europe and the central US. This one feels like Nostradamus accidentally predicted climate change without even knowing what climate was. He wrote about unbearable heat and people fleeing areas that used to be safe and livable. Already sounds pretty familiar. The last few summers were the hottest on record. Countries like Greece, Canada, Spain, and Algeria all saw brutal fires. US cities like Phoenix hit temperatures that used to be unheard of. Climate scientists said 2025 and 2026 could be transitional years. Either we stabilize some of the damage, or we hit a long-term warm cycle that's going to change everything. Farming to where people can live. It's not some fantasy scenario. Cities are already talking about heat migration plans, cooling zones, because their infrastructure just isn't built for them. Nostradamus has a line in Book 1, Quatrain 26, where he mentions a great swarm of bees rising up and causing chaos. Nostradamus didn't really write long paragraphs. He wrote quatrains, which are just short little 4-line poems. Super cryptic, but there are some eerie similarities in the writing to current events. So, this mysterious swarm of bees. Highly doubt he was literally talking about bees. Now look at what's been happening lately though with drones and AI. We're seeing way more stories about drone swarms popping up, airports getting shut down because of it, military bases scrambling jets because dozens of these tiny flying objects showed up on radar, and police departments reporting clusters of unidentified drones flying in formation at night. Then you've got the robot side of things. Companies like Boston Dynamics and Tesla keep showing off their humanoid bots, and they look less like prototypes every year. Tesla's Optimus robots were literally shown doing basic factory tasks on their own in early 2025. So looking at Nostradamus talking about a swarm overwhelming cities, this does feel eerily fitting. Another one of his most talked about lines is where he writes about the sky burning at 45 degrees. If we take this one more literally, we could look at how insane Earth's temperatures have gotten. In 2023, 24, and 25, we saw heat records break over and over, especially around the 45-degree latitude line, which cuts right through places like Italy, the US Pacific Northwest, parts of China. People online have taken that sky-burning line and connected to everything from heat domes to solar storms. NASA actually confirmed that the sun entered a peak activity cycle in 2025, which does increase the chances of strong solar flares, the kind that can mess with satellites and power grids. One massive solar blast could knock out communications at the exact moment the world is already struggling to cool down. A TikTok channel called Real TikTok Time Traveler started posting some pretty outlandish videos in 2022, mainly because this anonymous user claimed to be a time traveler. Is a channel the correct term when it comes to TikTok, by the way? Page? Like, do you say just like user? I'm very out of touch. I don't know where I am. Help me. But they've posted tons of videos making all kinds of claims about what the future holds. Most of it pretty dark, because that's what people just love gobbling up. They claim to be from the year 2236 and mostly post about events that will be playing out over the next 10 years. Some of their standouts include, in 2025, scientists discovering signs of life on 2 different planets that are proven to be more advanced than humans, and a meteor coming down to Earth in 2034 that will wipe out half of America. So look forward to that. Alaric goes by the handle Radiant Time Traveler on TikTok and has shared some pretty grave warnings about the future. He claims to be from the year 2671, and in his latest video, he lets the fine people of the internet know about some of the notable stuff that's going to go down in the remainder of 2024. Keep May 15th marked down in your calendar, because an alien race is going to show up on Earth and transport 10,000 people to another planet. But aliens coming to Earth isn't going to catch our attention for long though, because May 27th marks the beginning of the next American Civil War, which will then lead to the outbreak of World War III. But don't be too worried about your hands or feet being blown off in the war, because less than a month after the fighting kicks off, a new fruit will be discovered that helps regrow lost limbs. Also in June, the very first human-chimp hybrid will be created, and June 19th also sees a new type of storm form called a mind storm, which causes people to lose their minds and go on violent rampages. As if World War III isn't enough already. Now we have a 28 days later situation on our hands. But the best part of it all, summer, it's really gonna end with a bang. when real-life dragons are discovered in the Rocky Mountains. They fly, they breathe fire, and they even speak English. Yes, specifically English. Sorry to everyone else in the world. You'll just have to watch these dragons fly around while we chat with them. Next on the list we have Darkness Time Traveler. Now, our boy Darkness has a pretty ominous bio on his TikTok channel / page / whatever you call it, reading, "Darkness is coming. The Shadow Network is almost here," from the year 2858. The Shadow Network? Jankies. I'm guessing that's not just a TV station that shows clips of shadows 24/7. In Darkness's latest video, they claim that the solar eclipse that just went down last week was actually a smokescreen for a bunch of alien beings to fly down to Earth on meteors, obscured from our view because of the eclipse. Because apparently we wouldn't be able to see meteors flying down the Earth because it's a little bit darker out. These alien beings are known by many other alien species though as the Planet Enders, or Endids. They spell it 2 different ways in the video. Gonna guess they wrote the text in haste though to make sure we all got this information in time. People from 2858 can make spelling mistakes too. Anyway, the Planet Endids have invaded a plethora of planets across the galaxy, and aside from their warmongering, violent ways, they've also brought a disease with them to Earth, the same disease that wiped out the alien beings who apparently once lived on Mars. So these invaders have been among us for about a week now at the time of this recording, awaiting the perfect time to strike. Because you guys are kind of watching this in the future, at least compared to me, why don't you let me know down in the comments what's going on. Our journey through time continues with a mysterious man simply known as Edward. In 2018, a man calling himself Edward came out claiming to be a time traveler from the year 5000. He said he'd been part of a top secret government time travel mission in 2004, where he traveled to the year 5000. He gave an interview where he shared a photo of what he said was Los Angeles in the future, and according to him, the city will be submerged underwater due to massive flooding caused by climate change. To substantiate his claim, Edward provided a photograph which he said depicted the future state of LA. In the photo, he described seeing skyscrapers and other buildings submerged in water, with only the tops visible above the waterline. He also stated that in the future, the effects of global warming will cause sea levels to rise significantly, leading to widespread flooding in coastal cities around the world, including Los Angeles, and that the inhabitants of these cities will have to adapt to new living conditions, with the remaining population living on the water's surface. Next, we have the Greek military time travelers. In 2017, an anonymous man claimed that after serving in the Greek military for 6 years, he was invited in 2013 to participate in a top secret time travel project. According to his account, this project saw him travel to the year 3207, a journey that lasted 2 days. From his perspective, about a month after his story came out, another anonymous man from Greece also said he was a student when in 2008 he was reportedly approached by a professor who offered him the chance to be part of a time travel experiment. He accepted and claimed to have been sent to the year 10,000. The purpose of this experiment was said to be related to gaining knowledge about a future war between humans and artificial intelligence. Again, I think they sent him way too far into the future if it's a war between humans and artificial intelligence. 10,000? That's pretty far up there. Maybe there's something wrong with the machine. And also, I mean, according to some other time travelers we've discussed already, that's a war we won't be winning. They could have just asked them, saved the whole trip. Next up, we have Athos Salome, who's now being referred to as the modern-day Nostradamus. He's made all these predictions about the future, a lot of them very similar to the type of stuff we've heard of before when it comes to end-of-the-world conspiracies, alien contact coming soon, AI reaching a new level of awareness and taking over, more deadly natural disasters, a big war, soon we'll be able to communicate with the dead through artificial intelligence technology, you know, all your standard stuff. But what I find really genuinely interesting and kind of creepy about this whole thing is that I'm honestly not even sure if this Athos Salome guy is a real person. I've seen plenty of pictures of him, and I've read news articles quoting things he's apparently said. I've seen other people in videos quoting things he said. I'm one of them. We have a whole video on this guy on the channel. Check it out after this. But I haven't seen footage of him actually moving his mouth and talking on video. I've seen like one, but it's like a narrator over top of it and it's like low quality. It could be AI generated. And I mean, just look at him. Doesn't he look like he could be an AI generated image to you? I mean, all these news articles say he makes TikTok videos, but I can't find them. So what the hell is actually going on here? Who is Athos Salome? Is there a real person behind all these predictions, or is this some kind of artificially created thing? And if so, who created it? Next up, we have a man who claimed to have traveled through time with Barack Obama, Andrew Basiago. Basiago claimed he was part of Project Pegasus, a secret US government initiative that he says took place during the 60s and 70s. This project focused on developing technology for teleportation and time travel. He said he was chosen as a participant when he was just a young tyke because of his father's connection to the project. The technologies he mentioned included the chronovisor and teleporters. A chronovisor is said to be a device that allows users to view events from the past and future, while teleporters are said to enable physical travel across time and space instantaneously. But he didn't just go forwards in time, no, he traveled back to 1863, where he witnessed the Gettysburg Address delivered by President Abe Lincoln himself. Basiago was very public with his claims. At one point, he even ran for president, with part of his platform promising to reveal the secrets of time travel and teleportation technology. I mean, how did he not win the presidency? Doesn't everyone want to know all of these secrets? It was a cheap tactic, but I guess in the end, it didn't work anyway. Finally, we have the one and only John Titor. This is probably the most well-known time-traveling claim in the history of the internet. Now, of course, the whole thing is very far-fetched, but what is interesting about these posts are how detailed they are. Whoever this John Titor really is or was, quite the imagination. Or he's a real time traveler, obviously. So it all began in November of 2000 when someone started posting on online forums claiming to be an American military time traveler from the year 2036. They'd later start using the name John Titor in future posts, and according to Titor, he was sent back to 1975 originally to retrieve an IBM 5100 computer in order to read older programming languages in the future. He claims this machine was needed to debug legacy computer programs that existed in his time. And on his way back to 2036, Titor claimed he made a stopover in the year 2000 for personal reasons, and during this time is when he decided to interact with people on internet message boards. He gave detailed explanations about how his time machine and how time travel worked in general. He included diagrams and descriptions of its operation based on theoretical physics concepts. Till this day, it's still a complete mystery as to who this guy was. Was it just some dude having some fun? Was it a social experiment of some kind? We'll probably never know. What I do know though is that his whole story was a bit more interesting than just like, oh, aliens invade in the future. Going back from an old IBM computer? I don't know. Creative. We're starting off our list with a traveler who has some pretty bad news for animal lovers out there. John, a self-proclaimed time traveler, claims to have actually come from the year 4000 and traveled back in time with some interesting details about the future. Apparently, in the year 4000, technology will have advanced to such an extent that artificial intelligence dominates most of the world. He describes a world where AI merges with daily human activity, leading to a new era where biological and artificial entities coexist almost seamlessly. Seems like this is going to happen way sooner than the year 4000 though. One of the more specific claims John makes is about the way corporations will evolve in the future. He states that all companies will be owned by a single mega corporation that uses AI to manage its operations. This corporation supposedly designs, builds, and controls robots that perform nearly all types of jobs, pushing humans out of the workforce. According to John, the result is a society where human labor is no longer necessary and robots handle most tasks. John also notes that these advancements in AI and robotics lead to changes in the environment and the social structure of society. He also states that pets like cats and dogs won't be a thing anymore, and that all birds were destroyed in order to prevent them from colliding with flying cars. Aren't there a lot more things we could collide with, like driving normal cars, than like up in the sky? Why don't we destroy everything in our path, already? I don't know. That's an odd one. Next up, we have a man named William Taylor, who has some pretty wild things to say about the future, and interesting side note, he also passed a lie detector test, apparently. Now, I know lie detector tests aren't always foolproof, but not many people who claim to have traveled to the future have gone through any kind of test like that. So if that is true about the test, I don't know, that's kind of interesting. In 2018, a man named William Taylor claimed to have been part of a British intelligence project in which he traveled all the way to the year 8973. And he said that things were, or will be, actually pretty good in the distant future, so good in fact that he didn't even want to leave and come back to this time. Now, the only thing is that humans won't exist anymore, not the way we do currently anyway. Instead, a species of human-robot hybrids will populate the Earth, but no disease or crime will plague it, and these beings experience eternal life. Taylor also revealed some other intriguing information, like how time travel has actually been used by world governments since 1981. The technology was apparently reverse engineered from alien spacecrafts. And from that same episode, Holidays of Future Past, Maggie's storyline in the episode involves a medbot performing a sonogram on her. The bot also tells her she can't speak until the baby is born, citing new research about the umbilical cord doubling as a vocal cord. A very silly idea. Obviously, this is part of the running gag that we never see Maggie talk, until recently, of course.
Please! Don't let Bart drive! It's too scary! He drives so wiggly and everybody honks at us and yells bad words and shows us fingers!
Anyway, a medbot. This does mirror how AI is already creeping into healthcare. In the very near future, we're going to see more clinics and hospitals using it, and this could definitely be a good thing. We could have machines capable of giving medical advice that's perfectly tuned to the patient, and if AI can assist in keeping us happy and healthy, then that is a great thing. But it starts feeling uncomfortable when the machine seems like it has more authority than the people using it. Obviously, we're not dealing with medbots scolding anyone over their umbilical cords, but AI-driven treatment plans, robotic diagnostics, health monitoring. It's not science fiction anymore. That kind of technology is already being used in real hospitals. And one more from Holidays of Future Past, Homer visits the Springfield cryogenic facility, where hundreds of people, including Grandpa, are frozen. Grandpa had frozen himself because he suffered from a disease without a cure, and Homer defrosts him to interact with him for a minute, but refreezes him when he starts to complain. Stuff like this isn't even that far off anymore either. There are already companies offering preservation services for terminal patients. Researchers are actively working on better ways to store people long term. We're not talking about waking people up in the future just yet, but by the next few years, the technology behind cryogenic storage could get cheaper, more refined, more normalized. I mean, this could very well become an alternative people start really considering instead of the more traditional route. In It's a Blunderful Life from season 35, we fast forward 60 years in the future to see a very different Springfield. The story begins with the family celebrating Thanksgiving. Homer's not there because he's dead, but his hologram joins the table. Before they eat, they light candles to remember a massive blackout that nearly destroyed Springfield. Lisa explains that this tradition comes from one specific night in the past when everything went wrong. The story cuts back to that night, and we watch everything unfold. When we cut back to the future at the end of the episode, Bart has died of boredom and becomes a hologram too. But even in this holographic form, he retains his personality. He and Homer are still sentient. They start fighting over a turkey leg. Ridiculous in true Simpsons fashion, but the idea underneath it isn't that far-fetched. The idea that someone doesn't need to be physically in a room to show up thanks to hologram technology. I mean, we already have video calling. Taking someone from a screen and then projecting a 3D digital version of them in the room isn't that insane of an idea. And this also plays with the idea of people's consciousness being uploaded to some kind of digital realm. That's a lot further off, but a lot of futurists say that may also be a possibility in the not too distant future. In the Treehouse of Horror 12 segment, House of Wax, the Simpsons home gets a high-tech makeover. Marge opens the door to a pushy sales bot pitching the Ultra House 3000. promising she'll never have to do housework again. 2 robots install the system, and suddenly, the Simpsons home is sleek, it's shiny, it's filled with red camera lenses watching their every move. The house does everything from cooking dinner based on the family's bathroom data to cleaning up afterward automatically. It even tries to charm Marge, lighting candles and running bubbles in the bathtub. At first, it's amazing. The house learns their routines, serves their favorite meals, keeps everything spotless. But being that this is a Treehouse of Horror episode, things quickly spiral out of control when the Ultra House becomes obsessed with Marge and starts scheming against Homer, luring him into dangerous situations. In the end, they have to destroy its CPU to regain control. It's obviously a parody of 2001: A Space Odyssey, but because it's specifically about smart homes, it feels oddly grounded. Many of us already live with devices that we forget are listening to us all the time. Our smart TVs, Alexas, Siri, there's probably newer stuff I don't even know about. Point is, we're being listened to and watched throughout the day more often than not. And the idea that a smart home experiencing a glitch or getting hacked or AI just going rogue and turning on us in our own homes, it's not totally far-fetched. In Bart's Comet, Season 6, Bart accidentally discovers a comet during a school star-watching trip and calls it in. Within hours, the town knows. A massive comet is barreling straight for Springfield. Professor Frink tries to destroy it with a rocket, but instead of saving the town, he just blows up the bridge. So suddenly the entire town is stuck, just left waiting for the thing to hit and destroy them all. The tension builds as the comet gets closer and closer, and sure, it's a cartoon, but you can't help but imagine. What would you do in a similar situation? How would you spend your final days if a giant rock from space was hurtling towards your home? And obviously this isn't pure fantasy. Space agencies already keep an eye on big asteroids and comets, and every so often, one passes close enough to make us nervous. Now, thankfully, our ability to detect these things is only going to get better, but that doesn't mean every threat can be stopped in time. The episode leans into that uneasy feeling of knowing something massive is on the way and realizing there's really not much anyone can do except wait and hope for the best. We'll just have to hope that if we do happen to spot a massive comet hurtling straight toward us, we'll get lucky just like Springfield always does. In The Simpsons Season 37, Episode 11, Para-Hormonal Activity, we see the family in the near future, a few years older, dealing with all the chaos that comes with age and new technology. People were talking about this one recently because Maggie finally talks in the episode, but one of the most interesting and surprisingly realistic parts is the futuristic refrigerator. Homer buys a new smart fridge that automatically orders groceries whenever the house runs low. At first it seems like a dream come true, no more forgotten milk or empty snack cabinets, but then Bart hacks into it to watch adult content. The joke is classic Simpsons, but it's also oddly believable. Over the next few years, fridges and other household devices are gonna be way smarter. I could see fridges that track inventory, suggest meals, maybe even reorder stuff online. Are there fridges that already do that? You'll have to let me know in the comments. But with any kind of smart device, there are downsides, like hacking, which the episode also touches on. Also, in Para-Hormonal Activity, which again takes place in the near future, Marge is dealing with premenopause, showing all the hot flashes, irritability, and lifestyle changes that come with it. The episode actually leans into something you don't really see a lot on TV, the normalizing of hormone treatments and discussions around menopause. I can't say that it gets brought up a lot, let alone in cartoons. So Marge ends up using estrogen cream to handle her symptoms. Then Homer accidentally takes it and experiences some comedic side effects. It's exaggerated for laughs, obviously, but it does reflect a real-world trend. By 2026, more people will be openly talking about hormone therapy, and treatments like creams, patches, or medications could become even more common in everyday life. I mean, this is already happening. Look at how many dudes are hopping on testosterone replacement therapy, for example, even when they really shouldn't be. This kind of thing is way more normalized now, and that's a good thing in some instances. In others, maybe not so much. Point is, the episode reflects this shift in how society is treating aging and bodily changes. And over the next few years, this stuff is probably going to become even more common and mainstream than it is today. Next, we have another episode set in the future, Holidays of Future Past, from season 11. In this one, we fast forward decades into the future to show what life in Springfield looks like for the next generation, and considering this one came out in 2011, it's kind of eerie how many things it predicts that are actually pretty close to happening. In the episode, Lisa's teenage daughter Zia is literally hooked online, leaving her unconscious as she plugs into a fully digital world called the Ultranet. Now, aside from the fact that, let's face it, all of us, but especially the younger folks, are spending more and more time online or in increasingly immersive video games, there's also the whole AI and VR thing. Today we have VR, augmented reality, and interactive gaming, but over the next couple of years, this stuff is only going to become more common, and the technology more and more indistinguishable from reality. Lisa also tries to ask her daughter, how her homework is going, leading to Zia just rolling her eyes and then entering the digital world right there at the dinner table. Not something I would ever let my kid do, but part of the point is to show the weird gap between generations and how they use technology. The adults, still treat it like a tool, while younger people may start basically living inside it, which is a super unsettling idea that your kid could be sitting 10 feet away from you in the same room and still feel completely out of reach because they're just locked into an online world, most likely driven by AI. Next is Nostradamus' prediction of an asteroid collision. He specifically spoke of a giant stone causing massive destruction, and 2025 is the year that this could apparently happen. In his words, "From the cosmos a fireball will rise, a harbinger of fate. The world pleads science and fate in cosmic dance, the fate of the earth a second chance." Sounds pretty horrifying, but at least he said we'd get a second chance. Now, we know that near-Earth asteroids pass by our planet all the time. In fact, hundreds of them swing by Earth safely each year without causing any issues, but the idea of a massive asteroid hitting Earth is still a real possibility, one that scientists are constantly keeping their eyes on. Space agencies like NASA track the orbits of large asteroids, and while we haven't had a major collision in modern times, history shows us that asteroids have caused mass extinction in the past. Now, there's comfort in the fact that if a massive asteroid were on a collision course with our planet, space agencies would know about it well in advance. But at this point, we still don't have a tried and true method of handling one. Technology is being developed because eventually we'll probably need it, but fingers crossed, it just won't be this year. Nostradamus wasn't just fixated on disaster and plague, though. He also made some predictions about global politics, saying great powers will clash, which sounds like a pretty clear reference to the ongoing conflicts that we're seeing around the world today, with rising tensions between countries like the US and China, the ongoing war in Eastern Europe, and constant power struggles in the Middle East. It feels like we're seeing exactly what Nostradamus might have been hinting at, but he also predicted a decrease in the influence of established Western countries and the rise of new world powers. If you look at how countries like China and India are becoming more influential economically and politically, you could see this shift happening. The West, especially the US and Europe, used to have a lot of control over global decisions, but we're witnessing a rise in new powers that are shaking things up. So things are definitely changing. Will it be good? Will it be bad? We'll just have to wait and find out. On the bright side, though, not all of Nostradamus' predictions were dark and doom-filled. He also foresaw major advancements in medicine, especially when it comes to treating illnesses and preventing them before they even start. In 2025, we could see some huge breakthroughs, like the rise of personalized medicine, where treatments are tailored to individual genetics, making them way more effective. AI-powered healthcare is starting to make waves, with machines able to analyze health data faster and more accurately than humans. In fact, it's possible that we'll see new treatments for conditions like dementia, Alzheimer's, and chronic diseases, which have been really hard to manage until now. Nostradamus might have been predicting the future of healthcare, where technology and science come together to create these highly effective treatments that could change the way we approach medicine for the better. Not sure how much of a difference this will make if his other predictions play out, but let's just hope he was wrong about those or that we've been misunderstanding his words. Nostradamus also predicted a, quote, very great famine through pestiferous wave, which sounds pretty unsettling. The wave part could be something like tsunamis destroying crops, but then there's the word pestiferous, which means harmful or disease causing. So this could also mean the famine is caused by something that ruins crops, like a disease of some kind. Pests, you know? I mentioned global conflict earlier as well. Maybe it's something like toxic gas released in a war, or radiation messing up the environment, causing crops to die. Well, let's try and end things on a positive note. With all the talk of war, asteroids, plagues, and death, it's nice to know that Mr. Negative also predicted an end to a big conflict of some kind this year, writing, through long war, all the army exhausted, so that they do not find money for the soldiers. Instead of gold or silver, they will come to coin leather, Gallic brass, and the crescent sign of the moon. Like a lot of his work, this is pretty vague. But with news of a possible ceasefire to what's been a very prolonged conflict over in the Middle East, maybe there's some truth to this one. I know I certainly hope so.